Alright, hello again. Welcome to Lesson 5 for Introductory Scottish Pipe Band Side Drumming. Once again, now that these are publicly shared videos, if you have questions or comments or need some clarification or pretty much anything above the standard grade for YouTube comments, please feel free to leave them. I'll get back to you as soon as I can on that one. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to today's lesson, which is taking what we've already learned and started using, which includes paradiddles, buzz rolls, triplet movements, and obviously correctly holding the sticks. We're going to start to combine and integrate some of these rudiments into movements and phrases. Especially right now, we're going to focus on a couple that you will use a lot in music and realistically are present in every mass band setting that I've been able to encounter that involves a 2/4, 3/4, or 4/4 march. Alrighty, so we have one last rudiment to learn before we can get to that, but first we'll do a brief review. So we will still need to use all of the proper stick technique. So once again, left hand, set, right hand, pinch, point, pull. And we will need to be able to use all of the different taps. 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. As well as paradiddles, right, left, 2 on the right, left, right, 2 on the left. And we're going to have to combine these with rolls and flams. So as we discussed on the last lesson, right now the emphasis for rolls is being able to get good, clean buzzes that last long enough that we're able to alternate hands and be able to get consistent buzzes. And really, I didn't get to touch on it enough, but the way to build speed with those is not to start going faster, or as I would say with lessons with mostly younger students, don't just be an angrier hamster trying to take these same buzzes and go as fast as you can, because usually the result is not actually a cleaner or better sounding roll. So again, the emphasis on that is still focus on good buzz quality, and then just build a little bit more pace by adding a tiny bit of squeeze pressure to make it fit in the right amount of space. So as we finished up with the 7, 13, and 25 stroke rolls, the pace we were going at was somewhat leisurely, but actually pretty reasonable. So it was triplet, 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 tap for the rolls, about that speed. And again, one more time. So we're going to extend this to 13s, triplet, triplet, tap, and triplet, triplet, tap. Now 7s, triplet, tap, triplet, tap, triplet, tap, triplet, tap. If we actually need to go any faster, all we really need to do is take the preload pressure, increase that a tiny amount, and then the sustained pressure, we need to increase that from basically coming almost totally off the stick to there's still a little bit of residual pressure. The resulting buzz may not be all that pretty by itself, but coupled with an arm movement that's about 20% faster, and really focusing on being able to take the stick from totally out of buzz right back to that reset position with as little effort as possible. This really is what allows us to do the sustained buzz rolls, is just picking up the stick. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but the trick to buzz rolls is picking up the sticks, not actually getting them to stay down and bounce. Staying down and bounce, it will come to you, especially if you're still struggling with it. Picking up the stick is where you can put in the effort and get a lot of results. But with that fast stick pickup and a little bit more pressure all the way across, the rolls will naturally just proceed a little bit faster. Then 13s and 7s. Alrighty, so that will be the way to kind of build the roll progression moving forward. So the last thing we need to do in order to actually get into mass bands level scores, and this will take us through grade 5 and even honestly the majority of grade 4 level scoring for side drums, which is the very, very most entry level grade, and then grade 4 is the grade that moves beyond that into a lot more technically challenging tune sets, and there starts becoming requirements to play tunes in addition to marches. And right now, High Desert Pipes and Drums is a grade 4 band, so that's the reference I'm using for this. But the only missing rudiment for that is you need to be able to play buzz rolls, combinations of taps, and flams. So flams, again, are actually a deceptively simple rudiment, but incredibly easy to get wrong. So The notional representation most people use is an inch and a foot in terms of stick height, and then you release them at the same time. And then for a left-handed flam, where the left hand is high up, your right hand would be an inch off the pad. And you bring those down together, and we get a bit of separation. Being very technically minded, I would explain that as the foot part is relative and not very important. What's actually critical is that the grace note, as you see marked on the music, is that note that comes before the big note. That has to be low. So I would actually consider 1/2 inch and 3 inches. These are actually excellent flams and extremely usable, whereas coming to above eyeball height, and especially if the other stick is high up at all, really anything above 2 inches or up to here, believe me, this is something that happens, especially for starting off students, you end up with a kind of loud sound. You also end up risking the opportunity to hit the drum simultaneously with both sticks. And if you have the opportunity to test that, feel free, just let me know beforehand, because that sound, well, if I'm nearby, or anybody nearby, that sound is not really that fantastic, and really we try to avoid that. So these flat flams, or windshield wiper flams, are really what we're trying to avoid. Instead, the focus on flams is to actually go slow enough that there's some separation, and we can get 2 distinct taps. I'm going to go and move over to the wood just so that it's a little bit more audible. So the idea behind a flam isn't necessarily to create more volume. We could obviously just add an accent and go from a normal tap to a little bit more squeeze pressure and just hit it harder. So believe me, as a drummer, you can always hit it harder. But the flam isn't necessarily to make a note louder. It draws emphasis to that note by making that note perception-wise thicker. So instead of an accent, we would add a flam instead. And that's just a distinctly different sounding note. And what ends up happening is that little grace note that takes very little effort still does a lot to making, especially on a high-pitched tuned drum like a Scottish side drum, that really makes that note a lot thicker, and it can cut through really, really well. Also, you should still kind of use them a bit sparingly. Just because you can play flams everywhere doesn't mean it's necessarily the best option. So, an exercise to work on for this is actually just getting to where you're ready to play a flam, and you just pose and wait for a flam. And if you're teaching a course, a very useful tool is if there's a problematic flam, something somewhere in where you're playing, have people play all of the notes right up to it, and then just instant mannequin challenge here. And then you'll be able to tell if this will pretty much always be a good sounding flam as long as both arms start coming down at the same time. Obviously, if you compensate by bringing this hand down first, you can still get the dreaded flat flam, but basically you try and bring them both down at the same time, you get that timing separation. But a flam that looks like this is going to be a very good flam. A flam that looks like this is going to be problematic. So with younger students, I've basically explained, anytime you see a drumming magazine that has a marching snare drummer, there are one of 2 poses that will end up on the cover of that magazine, and it is a right-handed flam or a left-handed flam. And what you don't want is to be on the cover of the magazine looking silly. So really the goal is make it look pretty, and the flam will sound pretty. That one up. All right. So last thing we're going to work on is starting to integrate some of these into some rudiments. So what we're going to do first is start off with flams mixed with triplets. And this is going to be a slightly unique approach, but what happens after we play a flam is the typical tendency is to want to take the flam and play an extra note with the hand that just played the big note. And it's harder to learn the trickier one first, but we'll do it that way. So we're going to play a flam that goes into a left and a right. So a right-handed flam, left and right. Flam, left, right. And again, flam, left, right. And then again, you can repeat that build-up speed. The mirror of that is going to be a left flam, right, left. So left flam, right, left. And again, left flam, right, left. Obviously, we can string these together, and that becomes its own somewhat tricky but easy to master setting, which is just alternating flam triplets. Right flam, left, right, left flam, right, left, 2 more, right flam, and left flam, right, left, and then we're done. So that's a rudiment that can actually build up and start recurring as its own complicated set. Another thing we can do is we can play triplets into flams, right and then left flam. So right triplet into a left flam, lit flam. And if you notice really carefully, one of the things I'm doing is as soon as I'm done playing the last normal tap before the flam note, right, up, and I'm basically, you could think of it as cheating, but I think of it as being very efficient. As soon as you're done with that, you can start preparing for the flam with this hand, so you're not trying to spend time playing triplet and then trying to rush the stick up to get it right back down. That creates a tendency to have some incorrect spacing where you get a triplet, oh yeah, flam. And instead what we'd much rather have is a triplet flam, straight into that. Then we'll play the mirror of that, which is a left triplet into a right flam. Triplet flam. One more time. Triplet flam. So for that last rudiment, a different way to think of it actually leans back on us playing paradiddles, but these will be very slightly different paradiddles. So we'll try playing very sedate low paradiddles, right and two rights, or left and two lefts. But the change we'll make building up to that is right before that last fourth note of the paradiddle, we'll bring the other stick up as if we're about to play a flam. So a right paradiddle with a left stick up, and double right. Looks like we're about ready to play a left flam for that last note. We'll do it one more time. Right and right, right. And now all we have to do is drop the proverbial hammer. Right and right flam. Right and right flam. And the key being, I actually want to be staring at my right stick. I trust my left hand to be able to come up and play a loud, confident note. This one is the one that will misbehave. Triplet flam. And one more time. Then we can switch that up. Same idea. We'll start off with a left-handed paradiddle, and we'll be watching the bead of the left-hand stick. Left, right, two lefts, and two. Right hand comes up, ready to play flam. Left and two lefts, and then we'll actually hit it this time. Left and two flam. Left triplet into flam. One more time. Left triplet into flam. So, for the very intro piece of music that we have, and if there needs to be something beyond my Google Drive share of this music, this is actually a score originally written to Auld Syne, but it works with any 4/4 setting. But this Auld Syne score has in it a somewhat complex movement that involves this. It's actually not all that complex, but it's one that will be very, very familiar if you've heard much Scottish mass bands settings. And what this is going to consist of is a right-handed 7-stroke roll. So we have 3 buzzes that start on the right hand into a left tap. That's the 7-stroke roll. What comes immediately after that is that left tap that ends the 7-stroke roll, starts off a new triplet. So we have buzz triplet, left tap triplet into a flam. So we're going to work on that movement. And once again, if you make that a completely onomatopoeic movement, it basically should sound like rigida plop. They're willing to make it sound a little bit frog-like. Sounds like this, which just consists of buzz, 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 tap, 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 flam. And a way to build up to that one is actually playing the right-handed 7-stroke into a left-handed paradiddle. 3 buzzes, left paradiddle. But we'll want to bring the right stick up, ready for a flam. 3 buzzes, left paradiddle. Then we bring that into a full-on flam. 1, 2, 3, left triplet flam. And as we start adding speed to that, and 2, and one more time, and then. So for the Auld Syne score for the second part, all we actually have to play is a flam in isolation, and especially for these isolated flams, there's no reason for them not to be perfectly pretty. We have a chance to pose, think about it, and then send the flam and make it really good. That sequence is a right-handed flam, that same rigida plop movement, right 7-stroke, left triplet flam, and then we have the backward sticked triplet flam movement, right triplet left flam. I'm going to put all that together really slowly, so it's the right flam, right 7-stroke, left triplet right flam, switch hands, right triplet left flam. 2, ready that movement, and flam, 7 stroke, triplet flam, and then triplet flam, up speed, and flam, one more time, 2 at high speed, flam. Alrighty. The only major changes that ever have to happen to this movement will be the addition of a couple of pickup taps. So it's possible to, after the first rigga de plop, add one extra tap in, and triple lip flap. So that little sneaky left tap in the middle there. Tap, triple lip flam. Flam is what's used in the 3/4 massed bands. The score that High Desert uses for Road to the Isles adds in another tap flam in front of that very last trailing right-handed flam. Flam, 7 stroke, triple lip flam, tap, triple lip flam, tap flam. And to make this into the 4/4 and 2/4 massed bands, we just add a little run of singles after all of that. Flam, 7 stroke, triple lip flam, triple lip flam, and flam, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So right there, it's a lot to take in, I realize, but with that right there, if you can play that slowly and smoothly and consistently, especially the consistency and the accuracy there, if you're having to fudge the sticking or the quality of the buzz rolls starts to go down while you're trying to fit everything else in, don't be afraid to just play it a little bit smoother and slower. That same axiom. If you can play it smoothly, you can always play it quicker. If you can't play it smoothly at that speed, you need to slow it down and get it smooth, then play it back to quicker again. It's as simple as that, but keep working on that at that nice, slow, consistent pace. And that can build into basically the tricky part of all of the introductory mass band tunes. So with that set of tools, you'll be able to go forward and start learning music. Thanks.